10 stealth games you need to play. The stealth genre has some of the best games we've ever played over the years, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down anytime soon. With mainstream action and RPG games also involving stealth mechanics in their gameplay style, stealth is slowly turning into something that's more of a necessity than a niche. Ever since the inception of the genre way back in 1981, here's a quick trivia fact. The first ever stealth game was Sega's 005. And yes, don't worry, we looked it up. The genre has seen massive developments just like many other lists on this channel. We're not going to be ranking these games, so this list isn't in any specific order. Let's look at a few awesome stealth games over the recent past that you should really play. First off, we have Deus Ex: Human Revolution, back in 2011.
I never asked for this.
This quite easily is one of the best games I've ever played. Deus Ex: Human Revolution acts as a prequel to the legendary Deus Ex original that came out back in 2000. Human Revolution is an absolute charm with great characters, really good stealth mechanics, and fantastic RPG elements. This one is probably one of the few games that's a stealth RPG. Pairing those two genres together sometimes was unheard of until this series, and I must tell you that Eidos Montreal has done an incredible job. Set in the year 2027, players control Adam Jensen, a security officer for Serif Industries, which develops controversial artificial organs called augmentations. After an attack on Serif Industries, Jensen undergoes extensive augmentation and investigates the shadowy organization behind the attack. The story is really compelling. Once you start playing the game, you won't want to stop. A must-play for all you stealth and RPG lovers out there. Next up, we have Dishonored. Arcane Studios' 2012 Dishonored really showed the world how stealth games should be made. Adding new elements to old concepts, this first-person look on a game that subtly encourages the stealth route is absolutely stellar. Stealth is, of course, not the only way to play Dishonored, but that side of things is definitely good enough to be mentioned. On paper, the player is completely free to choose whether to rampage through the streets, making a lot of noise and killing everyone on sight, or remain completely unseen, potentially not killing anyone at all. Dishonored goes retro and features those same post-level scoreboards that are in so many stealth games, with checkboxes that are only ticked if you don't alert a single guard or kill a single person. You know how it works. And the protagonist can upgrade his magical skills to the extent that he can leap across rooftops in a split second, freeze time, and instantly turn a downed enemy into dust. Which I think you should see for yourself first.
Stop him! Guard! Shoot that bastard! Kill him!
Following Dishonored, we have Watch Dogs 2, back in 2016. After the semi-success Ubisoft had with Watch Dogs, a sequel, Watch Dogs 2, was released back in 2016. This time around, players are taken to the San Francisco Bay Area to explore and cause havoc by hacking various terminals connecting to city functions or personal smartphones. I must also add that the Bay Area that they've designed is incredibly lifelike. Much like the last installment, there is an emphasis on taking the stealth approach when going through various missions. You'll luckily have the ability to use various gadgets to help you in locating the enemies along with taking them out. And that kind of brings out the best in this tech-based stealth action game. I've featured this game on our overlooked games of the last decade as well, which you can check out in our suggestions right now, because of how incredibly underplayed this game was. It took some time for people to actually get around to playing it because of how underwhelming the previous game was. Following Watch Dogs 2, we have Splinter Cell Conviction back in 2010.
Anything.
When someone strikes at the ones he loves, he will take any steps necessary. He's looking for answers.
Splinter Cell Conviction is a lot like the games that have come before in the series, but it comes with the introduction of new gameplay elements that have brought in a dimension of all-out action. One of which is the Mark and Execute feature, which allows the player to mark specific targets, such as enemies or objects, and shoot them in rapid succession without manually targeting each. Pretty neat, right? There are several other features newly added for its time, such as Last Known Position allows Sam, the protagonist, to track his foes to aid in stealth, except for a few open combat missions. Conviction has a very strong emphasis on stealth and is a good addition to the series and the genre if you already haven't checked it out today.
What happens next is up to you.
Next up, we have Alien Isolation, back in 2014.
I know why you're working in the region where she went missing. You're still looking.
This game is not for the faint-hearted. Alien Isolation is set 15 years after the events of the film Alien, where players will take on the role of Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Ellen Ripley, who is on an investigation to tracking down the mysterious disappearance of her mother. It's probably the perfect premise for any horror game. Now, the only reason for me to include this one on our list of stealth games is for the fact that there actually isn't any way to play this game other than hide and move silently. There really isn't. We checked. The game, though, does a very good job with its stealth elements and mechanics, making it as horror-infused as the best horror titles, much like the old-school survival horror titles. Alien Isolation has an emphasis on players avoiding the hostile alien enemy. Instead, gamers must rely on stealth mechanics to maneuver around the game, which makes it stand out from the rest.
Ripley, slow down. A creature.
He said, come.
Following Alien Isolation, we have Origami, back in 2013. In this third-person stealth game, players are put into the shoes of an undead assassin with the power to control the shadows. The game's art style is really reminiscent of cel-shaded titles that have come out over the past years. Using a unique gameplay mechanic, players can teleport to any shadow, become invisible, materialize weapons, and even mold the shadows into a terrifying dragon to infiltrate enemy ranks. The implementation of these gameplay mechanics is what really makes Origami stand out as a stealth game. The game offers players the ability to choose their own playstyle, with multiple paths to complete each scenario and situation. I really urge you to play this game because it will not disappoint. Next up, we have Hitman, back in 2016.
We're at 47. I've got the first row files compiled and uploaded. Go over them and let me know what you need.
The 2016 reintroduction of the Hitman series has really paved the way for several other stealth games to involve elements of wit rather than old-time consuming methods. IO Interactive's Hitman is a return to the series' roots. Players once again step back into the polished shoes of Agent 47 as he scopes out his designated targets and kills them with flair. The intelligence required to completely map out a kill is probably the most unique measure in gaming I've ever seen. Sneak around undetected and kill your targets by making use of your surroundings. The best kills are those made without setting off any suspicion. A true stealth masterpiece. Next up, we have Styx, Shards of Darkness.
I've got a deal for you, Goblin.
What's the deal, Captain?
I want you to steal an ambassador's scepter.
You have all received a scepter.
The Styx series hasn't really been around the gaming world because of how overshadowed the franchise has been by huge AAA releases. The games, however, are absolute gems. Great stealth mechanics, a good engaging storyline, and several features that would make you forget the game anytime soon. Styx: Shards of Darkness is a stealth-focused video game developed by Cyanide. Set as the third installment to the series, players will take on the role of protagonist Styx. The overall narrative of the game is to infiltrate the dark elven city of Korongar to discover the reason between the new alliance of dark elves and dwarves. If you played previous installments to Styx, then you'll find most of the gameplay elements have returned in this latest release. Styx will be able to turn invisible briefly, lay down traps, and even clone himself to take out nearby enemies, which are some of the newer added features.
Dwarf piss tastes better. Less calories, too. To be skilled or not be skilled? That is the question.
Next up, we have Metal Gear Solid: Phantom Pain back in 2015.
I like working solo anyway. You're a legend in the eyes of those who live on the battlefield.
The latest installment to Hideo Kojima's legendary Metal Gear series is Phantom Pain, and the game has to go down as one of the best games ever made. This ushers in a new era for the franchise with cutting-edge technology powered by the Fox engine. The game is the first in the series to take stealth into an open-world setting, offering more tactical freedom than ever before. Set 9 years after the events of Ground Zeroes, the game resumes its story in 1984 with the Cold War still as the backdrop. I won't tell you much about the game because spoilers are aplenty if I were to do so. I'll just tell you that the game is an absolute play for stealth lovers and action gamers alike.
Don't get spotted.
Lastly, but never the least, Last of Us 2. The Last of Us franchise is another incredible franchise that has never disappointed. The attention to detail and gameplay elements that make any game unique has been notched up twofold with this series, especially with this sequel. The Last of Us was a massively popular video game from developers Naughty Dog. Overall, the game was a narrative-driven title that followed a man tasked with delivering a young girl across the country, set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity is dwindling in numbers if attacked by infected zombie-like creatures that are scattered all over due to the cordyceps brain infection. It's probably one of the best games ever made, according to me, and to make things even better is that its 2020 sequel did not disappoint one bit. Why is this in a stealth game list, you ask? Well, the game is completely dependent on the stealth mechanics, and that's what makes a genre-defining game. The Last of Us Part 2 follows the events of the first game several years later. In the game, players take on the role of Ellie, who is living in a community where it seems that the threat is less on the infected and more on the human factions. I don't want to be spoiling anything, but a tragic event occurs, leaving Ellie to go against a group of people, and that's kind of the overall picture from where you start things off from. Another must-play title that has won several Game of the Year awards all over. It's another must-play title that has won several Game of the Year awards all over, and why wouldn't it? It is probably one of the best series and games ever made. It's almost like controlling a movie that you're watching. Absolutely incredible.
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
That's it for our list. Let us know in the comments which stealth games you love. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.